Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Dad Edge podcast. I'm Larry Hagner, your host and founder of this show, and I'm an imperfect moron father. Yes, you probably didn't expect to hear that, but that is absolutely true. I was asked actually not too long ago, man, after doing all these shows and all these episodes, like almost 800 episodes, man, your house has to be like perfect all the time. Everybody's happy. And no, that is not the case. There are bad moments every single day. There is drama every single day, and sad to say, some of that comes from me. But I will say that doing this podcast and this movement and facilitating our mastermind, I will say that I can pivot faster. I can get out of my own way faster. I've learned lessons around patience, communication, intimacy with my wife. We just celebrated 18 years of marriage, and what I can tell you is literally our relationship has gotten better over the past 5 years instead of going downhill like it was for the first 10 years. So it's been quite a journey. And we are actually 1 month before we get started in today's podcast. We are actually 1 month, almost to the day, of our third annual, it was supposed to be our fourth annual live event called the Dad Edge Summit. It's here in St. Louis, Missouri. The gentleman that I'm actually having on this podcast today is actually going to be attending there as well. He's going to be, so we're going to see his smiling face there as well, as along with almost over 200 other men, which is really cool. Now, let me address the elephant in the room here real quick. Yes, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and yes, there are going to be, I don't know what things are going to look like in the next month, but what I can tell you is that we are moving forward unless we're forced not to. The other thing too, is we are taking precautionary measures. So we will have masks available for all men, not just regular isolation masks, but we're actually having live legendary masks that are going to be made for the men who are going to be there. We're going to have sanitizer on every table. And hey, even if you want it, we will dump boiling water all over you every 10 minutes, if that's what makes you feel more comfortable. I'm kidding. We're not going to do that. We're also going to color code name tags. So for instance, red, yellow, and green. So red means, hey, I wear a mask. Don't touch me. And I like to stay 6 feet away from everybody. And I don't want to share my pens or anything like that. So we have that. Yellow means, hey, I'm okay with a fist bump, but still kind of mind your distance from me. I'm not comfortable with hugs. I'm not comfortable with close speaking. And then green is like, I don't care anymore. And I just want to live my life. And I'm okay with hugs and handshakes and everything else. So that's what we're doing. We're also making this a hybrid event as well. So for those of you who want to join us on a virtual basis, you'll absolutely be able to do that because we'll be streaming it through Zoom. So if you want to buy a ticket for the summit, you absolutely can. We're going to have a kickoff at First Form headquarters here in St. Louis, Missouri, with our friends Andy and Sal Frisella. They'll be there. We are also, our keynote speaker this year is going to be Dr. Meg Meeker. And you probably, if you're listening to this show, you know who Meg Meeker is. So strong fathers, strong daughters, along with, I believe, My Father the Hero, and then Strong Mothers, Strong Sons. I think she actually has written 4 other best-selling books around fatherhood and parenting. But she's going to be there. She has spoken at some of our events in the past. She's absolutely outstanding. I will be speaking, of course, and then my 13-year-old son will be speaking on youth resilience. So he wrote a book a couple of years ago called Never Give Up No Matter What. It was all about his journey of almost giving up football, and he decided to keep going. It's a great story, but what I can tell you is the kid is, he is stubborn and he is extremely resilient, and he will not stop at anything. In fact, I have a war wound on my elbow to prove it. Like when he throws me around when we wrestle, and I'm not even kidding. The kid does not stop. But hey, listen, here's what we're going to do today, gentlemen. As you guys know, on Fierce Fridays, what I like to do is I like to do a variety of different things. And one of them is I really, really enjoy interviewing men who have done life with us in Dad Edge Alliance, because here's the interesting thing too. The feedback I've gotten from Fierce Fridays is you guys really, really love these episodes. And the reason you love these episodes is because they are so relatable, right? We all want to hear from guys like Jocko, right? But not all of us are Jocko. But what's really cool is to hear from a man who is in the trenches, a guy just like me, a guy just like you. And how do we go about fatherhood? How do we go about marriage? How do we go about life in general? right? And these are your normal everyday guys. And I want to start out this particular episode with a quote. And this quote is from my guest today, Michael. And he said, "The biggest barrier to success is the fear of failure. The biggest barrier to success is the fear of failure." Man, I'm excited to have Michael on. Michael, it's good to have you, brother.
Thanks for having me, man. Good to see you.
So I love that quote, by the way. Why? Tell me why that quote resonates with you so much.
Yeah, so actually I got that quote, actually, that's still sitting on my desk right here. It was from my father, and he engraved, I mean, it's not his quote, but he engraved it for me on my first job out of college. And it's just something that's probably the biggest flaw of mine, is the fear of failure. Every time there's one way to go, I've taken a lot of the easier paths because I've always been so scared of failing. And so he just tried to always ingrain in my head that quote right out of college, and it's always stuck with me. I keep it here on my desk here at work. Obviously, I'm at home. My job's right here. I'm sitting at work right now. So yeah, that's really where it started from.
Wow. So this quote is not only meaningful to you, but it's been like gifted to you and engraved.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That is solid.
And it's something I have to remind myself every day because, like I said, it's one of my flaws.
You know what? I think it's in it's wired up in all of us in that way. I don't know how old are you?
32.
Okay. I was going to say, do you remember the brand No Fear? But you were like probably in the womb still at that point. But No Fear was a huge brand with me growing up when I was like in middle school. Like everyone wore No Fear. And you kind of grow up with this mentality, or a lot of us do. It's like, oh man, if I feel fear, I'm just weak. Right. Or, if I don't have the absence of fear, that's just weak. What I learned by doing this podcast, and this actually came from the message of a lot of our special operators, like our Navy SEALs and the Green Berets who have been on the show. And, fear is something that's always going to be there. It doesn't matter how highly skilled we are, how highly trained we are. One of the coolest things that I heard from Mark Devine, who's former Navy SEAL commander, was, dude, I felt fear all the time. Like every time I went on a mission, I was terrified that I wasn't going to come back. I was terrified I was going to die. I was terrified my friends were going to die. He said, there is no such thing as no fear. Courage is acting in spite of fear. That's what courage and bravery is. It's not the absence of fear. Courage is the very presence of fear, but the ability to overcome and still take action. And I don't know what it was about hearing that quote. I was like, oh my gosh, so you Navy SEALs actually feel fear, right? And, even like these professional athletes who've been in the show, they have all felt fear. And it's not the absence of fear. It's acting despite the feeling of fear. So,
yeah.
Well, let's get started here, man. Very true. Yeah. Let's get started here, man. We'll start with some fun questions first. Outside of being a father to your two wonderful kids, and obviously your newest, who's just a couple weeks old, what is something that brings you joy outside of fatherhood and work and the grind?
Oh man, honestly, first thing that comes to my head is golf. If I to put everything aside, I love my me time is going to hit golf balls, chipping, putting, and because it's a constant challenge, and I love chasing challenges. And one day you can be great at it, the next day you can be horrible at it, and you'll keep on going. But I've actually turned that into, like, I know you said outside of my wife or kids, but I now do it with my son. We just cut down one of our golf clubs and regripped it down to his size. And now each Saturday morning I take him putting. And like this past Saturday, we did it for an hour and a half. And the 3.5-year-old will just sit there and do it. So although selfishly I love it too, it's a way to also hang out with him. So,
dude, that's amazing, man. And I'm glad for you. You're great on one day and not so great the next. If you're me, you're not great on any day. Like it just doesn't matter. The stars don't align.
Hey, great for me, but might be a 90. But hey, it doesn't matter. We're not talking about the score. It's all about having fun.
That's right. I just try to hit it straight.
Yeah.
Tell us something that you most enjoy about fatherhood.
Oh gosh. I love, particularly, obviously I have a 2-week-old and then now a 3.5-year-old. I just love when he comes chasing to me every time I see him. So I'll go pick him up tonight from daycare, and that big smile and hearing my name, Daddy, and him running into my arms and me being able to hug him. That's, to me, that's the favorite part. Obviously there's a lot of hard parts, but no matter what, when you see that smile on your kid, there's nothing like it. And I just, as he's getting older, he's in that stage where he'd just hug and kiss and that big old smile.
I gotta tell you, man. So as you know, I've got a 15 and a 13-year-old, and you know, if any advice I would give myself is embrace those moments even more, because like in a minute they're gone. You know, my wife left town this past weekend to go on a girls trip, and I got 2 straight nights of probably the worst sleep I've gotten in years, and that's because I allowed the littles to sleep in our bed, which is my 5 and 7-year-old. And my wife is like, "That's crazy. Why would you do that?" I was like, "Because 5 minutes from now they're not going to do that." So
So true.
while you're not here, I'm gonna do it, you know, because like those times they're fleeting. You know, they're not gonna be here long. And well,
Yeah.
good for you, man. Embrace those times big time. What about switching gears? How many years have you been married?
5.5.
Okay. So share with the audience something that you appreciate most about being a married man and maybe some of the lessons you've learned. And also maybe share something that has been one of the toughest lessons that you've learned.
So my favorite thing about marriage with my wife would probably, well, I love the teamwork aspect. So we really balance each other out. I happen to be the very type A, talkative guy. My senior superlative was most talkative, so that shouldn't surprise you too much. But she's way more even keeled, and she has done, props to her, does such a good job of just balancing me out. I'm the one that really wants to, energetic, always going, 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 and she knows how to just pull me back. And so being able to constantly have that right hand woman right next to me, being able to pull me in when I need to, selfishly has just helped me so much over the last 5 years. Well, we've been together longer than that, but through the marriage. Um, the most challenging thing, I guess it would also go with that, is, the whole parenting aspect. Obviously, we have different viewpoints and things. And from the second our first son came out, man, that's true partnership. Once the kid gets involved, then you really have to learn how your partner thinks about things. So in those beginning stages, she may have had a thought or a desire to do something with our son, and I was constantly questioning it, vice versa. And then that just opened up where how important the communication piece was. So I quickly learned after our son was born how weak my communication skills were, to be quite honest. But that really turned into a positive, because obviously fast forward to now, this last little almost a year and a half I've been doing life with you guys here at the DA. It was that tough moment of realizing how weak some of my skills were as being a husband and a father, but then ultimately it's turned into more of a positive situation.
Yeah, I got to tell you, man, when men come to do life with us, the two biggest things that I always hear them talk about that they want to hone the skills of, and that's number one is patience. I can say it before they do at this point, like
Yeah.
what's something that you really want to be better with? Patience. I always usually say it before they do. But patience is really tied to emotional resiliency, is really what it is. Most people think patience is a feeling or it's a measure of who we are at our very core. Like, oh, if I'm not patient, then I'm just weak. And so that's not necessarily the case. It's like, that you can learn the skills of emotional resiliency. But when you're talking about communication, what were some of the gaps that were glaring? And then on top of that, what were some of the things that you learned?
First and foremost, I just wanted to always talk over her. I always wanted to tell and not ask. I would always try to say, hey, let's do it this way, almost like my way or the highway kind of philosophy, and not listening. It was just recently Brian Bisher was on your podcast, and I think you guys were talking about having 2 ears and one mouth. And it's so true. It's like, God made us with 2 ears and one mouth. Oh, no, you know what? It was Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe was talking about that, having 2 ears and one mouth. And he was like, God made you with 2 ears and 1 mouth, use it that way. And so I just, like I said, I learned quickly. I started asking more questions from her and letting her open up. And then me sit back, and instead of just automatically coming with like what I thought was a solution, just starting to hear what she wanted and then start talking through it. If I didn't do that, I'm not sure where we'd be today, because that was a tough, I mean, we hit some pretty low moments in those beginning stages, and majority of it was my flaws.
Yeah, and that's a typical guy thing, is just that we don't necessarily want to listen. We do want to listen, but what we really want is we want to serve. But the way that comes across is like when we're problem solving with our wives is they feel unheard, and then it's like we're speaking two different languages, like
Yeah.
they're talking and we're like, well, let me show you how we could fix this. Well, you're not really listening. Well, yes, I am. You just, so yeah, it's a game of, the communication thing is a lot of listening, and not just a lot of listening, but to allow her to know that you're hearing her. Like right now in the background, I'm creating this course called uh, 21 Days to an Extraordinary Marriage, and a lot of it there's three modules on communication, on how we can be better listeners. We can mirror. We can use things like emotional validation and empathy, along with labeling emotions, right? Because a lot of people don't understand, like, if you even label somebody else's emotions, or if you emotionally validate somebody, and by the way, you don't have to agree with it to validate somebody, but if you do that, like, that person feels unbelievably connected to you, and they feel heard and they feel seen, which a lot of us, we skip over that part and we go right to solution based, where they're like, that's why they don't feel heard and seen. And to us, it doesn't make any sense, because, hey, if I come to you, Michael, with a problem, like, I would feel pretty upset if you're like, dude, like, so what do I do about this? Right.
Right.
And if you were just like listening to me, I'd be like, can you please tell me like what you think I should do here? Because that's the whole point of us as men going to each other. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this. You mentioned your father. And so I'm really curious. What was your childhood like growing up?
Yeah. So, well, it was originally my sister and I, between my parents. And then when I was in kindergarten, they got a divorce. And then they both remarried, and they each had two more kids. And my stepdad already had 2 kids. So I went from just having one sibling to all of a sudden 7 siblings,
Like the Brady
which
Bunch.
was awesome. Yeah, right. But yeah, it was a tumultuous time for sure. It was, I would not paint it as a cordial divorce. There were a lot of heated remarks and some bad things said about both parties. And, I will say though, one thing about my dad during that whole time was, as much as I know that there was some stuff going on in the background, he never, ever, ever spoke poorly of my mom. And I know he wanted to, but he never, that was one thing. And he verbally told me that as well. Like he'd say, I understand, I'm very upset about her for X, Y, and Z, but that's still your mother. You have to treat her right. And that is one big takeaway that I have during that time period, is that he did stand up for my mom all the time, even though, trust me, I'm sure they were I know they were wringing each other's necks in the background. But throughout all of that, I saw his love for us. I know that I never doubted my dad's love for us. But the one thing with my dad is, he's a workaholic. There's no doubt about that. And, I just remember throughout my whole time, growing up, I was always longing for that attention from him. And I could never pinpoint what it was, but I just always wanted the passion that I saw come out in him with work wasn't necessarily translating to me just as a kid. And so, even to this day, there's been a lot of ups and downs, with our relationship. And truthfully, I haven't fully come out and told him exactly how I've felt, of feeling the lack of closeness with him. I've gotten closer, of talking about it with them, but it's a tough discussion that there's a lot that has to be written down and figured out before I have that conversation fully. But we've taken strides with it. So that void, if you will, it's a void in my life, for that lack of closeness with my dad, that I can't fault him. My grandfather, his dad, a great guy as well, but his way of showing love was, hey, I go to work, I support my family financially, home for dinner time, the kids had to sit at the dinner, and then he would go back to work. And so I think that's how my dad saw love from his father. And so, that's you can't fault somebody for, I think we've talked about it numerous times in the DEA, like our dads were taught a way just like we were, and we can either choose to continue that route or we can try to break it. And I'm 100% committed to breaking that for my son and daughter.
I'm so glad.
No,
You
go
brought
ahead.
that up. No, I'm so glad you brought that up, because last week on Fierce Friday, we featured one of our DEA guys by the name of Andre. And Andre he actually just had twin boys. So he's got 3 boys under 2. But his father, just unbelievable, crazy story about his dad. So his dad was a workaholic, like literally he only saw his dad for maybe, 15, 20 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes a night. And it was usually his dad was still on a work call like 10 o'clock at night, and a lot of times he would drink, quite a bit of wine at night, and then, eat ice cream. And like he was very, very intense with his work. Work ethic was off the charts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that taught him to work hard. But his dad ended up coming down with a brain tumor when he was 52 years old. And they said he had 3 months to live. And the interesting thing about that is that his dad is actually still alive,
Wow.
12 years later. So he not only survived, he beat the odds, but now he's in this situation where he's watched the past several years and he's had a lot of time, obviously, to slow down and reflect. And some of his reflection has been, man, I wish I wouldn't have done it that way. I actually wish I would have had I struck a balance somewhere where I enjoyed my life, but I was so driven to work so hard to make sure that I was providing, because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. And now I'm realizing that that was only a small part of my job. And the bigger
Right.
job was to really be physically, mentally, and emotionally present, right? Which I wasn't, because I was so tunnel visioned on what I thought I should have been doing. And here we are, second week in a row, we've heard that very similar message. So as far as how you go about it, I mean, obviously Saturday mornings are a sacred time, it sounds like for you and your little boy right now. But if you were to fast forward 10 years from now, your son will be 13, right?
Yep.
And your daughter will be 10, right?
Yep.
So thinking about, let's put you in a situation where you're having dinner. It's you and your wife, 13-year-old Aiden. What's your daughter's name again?
Grace.
Grace. Grace is 10. And for a fact that you have not only struck a balance, but you're striking the balance, right? And not to say every day is perfect,
Mm-hmm.
but overall, you're balancing. You have that work-life integration. You're achieving those things. You're achieving connection with them. What things, if you and I were talking 10 years from now, what things would you be telling me that you've done over the past 10 years to make sure you're doing that?
So first and foremost, I think it would all start with them seeing the love that I have for their mom, my wife, Emily. I think that's where it starts. Like I just got done telling you about the divorce. I mean, it starts with a mom and dad. And so I think that them seeing their mom and dad just madly in love, and you even joke about it, like the goal of having your kids grossed out once a day by seeing you just kiss your wife or something. I think that's huge. So I think first and foremost, it starts there. I think them having that feeling and knowing that at any moment in time, I would drop anything to make whatever's important to them my priority as well. So they would know that I'm committed to, moving work meetings around to be able to make one of their games or sporting events. And that they know not only am I going to make that event, but the cell phone is to the side and I'm fully engaged with them at those events. And I bring that up only because that was one of the things. You might have a parent such as my dad who was at that game, but nonstop, he's walking back and forth, he's on with work. You score a goal on the soccer field, you look over. Who's the first person the kids look over to on the sidelines? There could be thousands of people that are looking at mom and dad. So my kids are going to see my face dead center on them during those sporting events or whatever the event is for them. And then honestly, I think the last thing would just be as a genuine friendship. They'll always know that I'm their father first, but that I can also be their best friend. And so by doing that, the only way that's going to happen is if I'm authentically hanging out with them and showing them right and wrong, but at the same time, giving them that, you say it all the time, like emotional safety and making them feel that they can confide in me and that, yeah, there might be things I'm going to be unhappy with them about, but they know that I always have their back and that I can still level set and relate to them. So I think that those are some things that I would definitely be doing 10 years from now.
Yeah, you mentioned the emotional safety part. We call it emotional safety or psychological safety, to where your kids feel comfortable, to talk to you about anything. And a lot of that has to do with some of the things we've already talked about, making sure you help label their emotions. You mirror things back to them. You don't necessarily have to run in with a golden parachute every time they have a problem. You can ask them questions to get them thinking about solutions, and guide them to make decisions. But yeah, you're right. There's that element, especially as kids get older. And I guess thank God that I was doing some of that right with my two oldest kids, because they feel really comfortable talking to me, but I didn't know what I was doing. And even now, what I can tell you with what you just shared, as your kids get older, as Aiden and Grace get older, it's going to become even more important, right, that they have a safe place to land. The other thing too is, I felt like in a way you were calling me out, and had nothing to do with you, had everything to do with me on this side, because you were talking about the cell phone thing. When your kids are at a game or whatever, I always have my cell phone on me. And the reason I do that is because I like to make videos of their stuff. But what do you think I'm doing in between plays? Like,
Right.
I'm falling into bad habits a lot, which I shouldn't be doing. And I need to be very, very conscious of, you're exactly right. It only takes like a 3-second glance up from your kids. You could be watching 95% of the game, but if they catch you in that 5%, not paying attention, I mean, what do you think their feeling of the game is going to be like? Was dad ever even paying attention, or what,
Right.
But you're exactly right. When kids are doing anything performance wise, they're going to look to you for that. Was dad watching?
Yep.
Do I see that validation smile on his face that I did something,
Mm-hmm.
that I did something cool, right? And so thanks for the reminder, man. This is what I'm talking about, man. I started the show. I needed slaps upside the head too, just like everybody else. I'm glad you talked about marriage and grossing your kids out. I love grossing my kids out. What do you do to keep things? You're 2 kids deep now. You got a newborn. Grace is a newborn. What do
Mm-hmm.
you do to keep your relationship with Emily fresh? And you're pursuing her, you're courting her, and she's doing the same. She's staying
Yeah.
constantly curious about you as well.
Yeah. So I'd say first and foremost, it wasn't always like this, but just putting a huge commitment to putting her first in what we do and spending time with each other. So we're committed to always having one night a week. We have a date night. So we still date each other. Sometimes, like there were several times during COVID where we were just doing it at home, but I forget the name of it, but I think it's called the Date Box. And it's a monthly subscription that just shows up at your house, and it's a random kit with, you don't know what's in it, and then you go through and figure it out, but it's a date night right there at your house. So we've always been committed to always dating each other once a week. So whether that's a babysitter or my in-laws live here, they'll take Aiden for a night. The other thing is that we do marriage counseling. Not even, we've done that even in high moments. We've always found we started that about 1.5 years ago. On and off, we'll go and see a counselor, and that's been amazing. And we've learned so much about each other through that. Even like I said, even during good times. And truly, I'll keep going back to this, but it's been a huge part in our relationship is communication. We tell each other everything. Like, we confide in each other about everything, and we try to ask each other how one is feeling. And I got to say, I've gotten a lot of it from this community. I mean, I've learned a lot of ways to connect with her that much more. And she is my best friend. I mean, not to go too far down the past, but her and I met on the first night of college in 2007, and we didn't start dating until 2.5 years after college. She happened to be one of my best friends in college. So she was the girl that I was going to with all the baggage of my other girlfriends during that time. So there is literally no secret between the two of us. We know each other's past. And so I just say that because we're married, but it was best friends first. And so we just hang out. I mean, we truly enjoy each other's company. Sure, sometimes she wants to kick me out, and that's when I go play golf. But otherwise, we really do. I mean, we put it as a priority. We need mom and dad time. So like the kids, like Aiden, obviously we're still working with a newborn. Aiden goes to bed every night by 7:30. And so from that 7:30 on is her and my time together. And I firmly believe in that. And she does too. It all starts with us, like I keep saying.
But Michael, aren't you supposed to wait until the relationship has so many problems before you go get marital counseling?
No, unfortunately, doesn't everyone think that?
Right.
No, I try to, I'm vocal about that, man. I
Yeah.
think it's so, even the actually, I think we have found, it's peaks and valleys, but when we've been in good times, counseling has almost been even more beneficial during that time period, because you almost start to build on like what's already good. You're just
Right.
making it even better.
Dude, I'm so glad you said that. I'm gonna rant for a second here on this one. Um, it's like, well, first of all, a lot of us think that if we go to a marriage, we have to have problems before we go get marital counseling. And that's like taking your car in after the engine blows up after you've never gotten an oil change, which no one ever thinks to do that. But yeah. So when it comes to um, marriage counseling and preventative maintenance, when guys come and join the DEA, right? Which, by the way, if you guys are new to this show, DEA is not the Drug Enforcement Agency. It's Dad Edge Alliance Mastermind. But guys will say, I'll ask them how things are going in their marriage with their parenting mindset, and a lot of the times the guys are like, yeah, I'm doing good. Things are actually pretty good. Like there's no 911 anywhere. I'm like outstanding. And I always ask them like, well, why are you here? Because I know why they're there. I'm just curious. I want them to articulate it. They're like, well, if it's going good, I know it could even be better. Right. So, but
Yep.
there's a huge advantage. I'm going to say this very, very boldly. There's a huge advantage to getting coaching, counseling, mentorship, a point in the right direction, whatever you want to call it, when you are not in a desperate emotional state. Like when your marriage is in a 911 5 alarm fire and you're trying to repair it, then what you're trying to do is you're trying to do rational things. You're trying to do logical tactics that's going to improve the marriage, but it's not necessarily going to have the greatest foundation because both her and you are extremely emotionally charged. You could also be emotionally drained. And it's really hard when you're in a heightened emotional state. It's very difficult to actually think strategically, methodically, logically, and tactically.
Yep.
And when you're trying to do that, it's very hard. You're trying to like basically ice skate uphill. You can still do it, but the journey is actually harder. And you nailed it. I didn't even think you were going to go down that road. But if you're doing something like marital counseling and things are good, it's like, how do we elevate it even more? Or how do we keep this train moving in the right direction? Like, what exactly are we doing right now that we can keep doing in our
Yeah.
marriage? I want to ask you another couple of questions, but in our marriage and our family, we go through this exercise called start, stop, keep. What do we need to start doing that we're not doing now that could elevate all of us? What are we doing right now that's working really, really well that we need to keep doing? And what are the things that aren't serving us that we need to stop doing? And when you take those pauses, man, like some beautiful answers come about, right? But a lot of
For
times, man, like if your marriage is in a good spot, man, take a TO. Hey, time out. what are we doing? Like, that's making it so work so well right now. So I'm glad you said that. Last question I have for you, man. If you were to, so Aiden is 3, Grace is brand new. You guys have been married for 6 years, right?
5.5. Yeah, we can call it 6.
Okay. So let's say 26 years old. Okay. So you're 32 right now. You have an opportunity to sit down with Michael 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when you were 20, let's call it 25.
Okay.
And you're like, hey man, I'm calling you up. We're going out for a beer tonight. I have an hour with you. I'm going to buy you dinner and I'm going to give you the best advice of your whole life of what's going to happen over the next 5 to 6 years. So meet you wherever. And you have this opportunity to like literally sit down face to face with yourself. And you're like, listen, these are the things that you need to be ready for over the next 5 to 6, 7 years. And these are some lessons that I'm going to teach you right now that are going to help you immensely. So you're not banging your head up against the wall. What advice would you give yourself around fatherhood and marriage?
That's a good one. So I think it would be stressing the importance of being a lifelong learner, on being the best, not even the best version of yourself, but as a better version of yourself when it comes to being a husband and a father. That you really can't do it on your own. And you were touching on it just a second ago about mentorship, coaching, all that. Even the Dad Edge Alliance, a mastermind, is that you need a team of, quite honestly, people who are further down the road than you, that have already been there and done that, that can then pour out support on you and help you and learn things quicker than maybe they did. Don't wait, once again, to a point that you just said, don't wait until it's too late where you're already in a mess. So selfishly, I'm glad I joined the DEA when my kid, Aiden at that point was only 2.5. And, now I'm learning skills and things that if I didn't join this, I wouldn't have. And now I'm able to hopefully set myself up in a better spot by utilizing the skills and tactics that I'm learning here. And so I don't think that ever ends, because think about it, being a parent or a husband, I mean, we're all in different stages, but every stage, it's always a stage, right? I mean, think about 30 years down the road. Now you got to think, how am I supposed to be a grandfather to this kid? Or, hey, how am I supposed to give my kid advice about how they're parenting their kid? You know what I mean? Not that I'm not wishing time away, trust me, but I mean, seriously, and now I'm in the newborn stage again. And so it's just, you got to be a constant learner. And if you think for a second that you're too good for it, or you got to get that ego gone. Like, you got to ask for the help. So I'd be telling myself, dude, you're 25 years old. Ask any man who's been there, just soak it up, be a sponge, and then don't be a sponge for too long though. And I think I'm still even taking that advice for myself right now, is you also want to start taking action on everything that you're learning. And there'll be trials and you'll mess up a little bit, but as long as you're doing the best and you're learning as much as you can, you're setting yourself up for success.
Man, a lifelong learner. That's tough, man, because I remember being your age. I remember being 32, and I remember at the time my kids were literally the exact same age that Aiden and Grace were, like Ethan and Mason, my two oldest. And to be honest, man, I thought I had the perception of like, I better know all this. And like, I have to know everything. And if I don't, man, I'm in trouble, right? And you're exactly right. Even starting at the time, it was Good Dad Project. I was just a little bit older than where you're at now. And I remember thinking like, man, I got to know it all. And now I can tell you, like, the cool thing about doing this podcast, and I mean, like right now, like what an excellent reminder that you were just like, hey, moron, make sure when your kids are out on the field, don't have your nose in your phone because they're going to be looking at you. So like things like that, you didn't call me moron, but I call me moron. That's okay. I am. But that's one of the coolest things is getting to learn, from others, getting to learn from what we call in the mastermind crowdsource wisdom or experiential learning. That's some of the best learnings we can possibly get. As far as if you want to be a great grandpa, it's really easy, dude. Just give the grandkids chocolate. That's
Yeah, there you go.
Hey,
Right.
before we head out of here, I want to give the men an opportunity to hear exactly what you actually do in the DEA, because I don't think we've had hardly any of our mentor guys. So we have several lead positions within the Dad Edge Alliance. One is team captain, who facilitates masterminds, team commander, which is second in charge of mastermind sessions, also in charge of connection and accountability. But now we have a 10-man mentor team for our new members. So share with the guys, what are some of the things you do? And I know you have direct contact when guys are with us in the first 10 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So it's been actually awesome to meet, like you said, the newer guys. So once the guys go through some of the onboarding process before they get to me, they'll reach out via email. I set up a quick Zoom call and we'll touch base with each other, do a quick introduction, very informal. And I really just kind of give them the lay of the land a little bit, answer any questions. And then, of course, ask them, hey, what's the best way to get a hold of them? Do they need any accountability? Do they, how would they like to keep in touch, and learn a little bit about them? And, I also take advantage of some of the mistakes that I've even made in some of the things when I first started, and how to really dive into the community that much quicker to get as much as possible out of it.
Love it, man. Yeah. So for those of you guys, if you're newer to the Alliance or you're catching this show, you might have Michael as a mentor. If you're a brand new member, you might see his smiling face and guiding you through our onboarding process. Michael, this has been awesome, man. Really appreciate. Obviously, there was so many powerful and simple reminders in there. Before we head out of here, so is Grace going to be your last? Are we going for 3? We going for
no. 2 and done. 2 and done. Done.
I said the same thing, man. I have 4 now.
Well, then I'm gonna have to do something different than whatever you did, because I am done at 2.
Yeah, we thought we were done too, and yeah, I guess God had a bigger plan, and then we were like, okay, we're done at 3, and then wow, here we go, like number 4. So
yeah, I'm hoping it stays at 2.
There are direct measures you can take to make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah, but I'm gonna, trust me, in a couple of weeks.
Oh, so is this already scheduled?
No, it's in the midst of getting scheduled and figured
Okay.
out. I'm definitely scared, but yeah,
Right.
it's getting scheduled.
I mean, dude, the look on your face, like you're like, oh no, yeah, this is a done deal. Like the freaking front door is closed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, Michael, thank you so much for coming on, man. This was so cool.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. I really enjoyed it.
That's right. I wish you health and happiness and a speedy recovery.
Touche.
Touche. Gentlemen, that's all we have time for today. I'll have a couple links in the show notes for you today. One is obviously an application if you want to come do life with us in Dad Edge Alliance. If you want to come and learn a few things like Michael has over the past 18 months. Obviously, he's done very, very well. Elevated marriage, amazing connection with his kids. He's now on our leadership team. Also, we'll have a new free resource for you guys in there. It's actually not very new anymore, but we'll still have it in there for you. It's a free email series on 21 days to an extraordinary marriage. So we'll have that for you in there, where I teach you 3 different skill sets, 3 different challenges in there. Literally all you have to do is do exactly what I tell you to do in the emails, and just watch things elevate with your marriage. You can go to this particular show, which is thedadedge.com/Friday 18. Again, thedadedge.com/Friday 18. Michael, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.
You bet. Gentlemen, go out, live legendary. Take care.